Here we're going to talk about the timeline for your paper assignment and also about database research and documentation. The first thing you're going to have to do is find a copy of your chosen film. You also want to make sure that your film has some information in the database that you can use so you don't get stuck later on. Once you've secured a copy of your film, you want to spend some time watching it, taking notes on things like the characters, the setting, and what the big idea or message or theme of the film might be. During the second week of the project, you're going to develop your ideas and continue your research. You're going to use your sources that talk about characters, setting, or theme. Make sure that when you pull sources from the database, you don't use the source just to give a summary of the plot. The sources should be analyzing something, and it's going to contribute to the understanding of the film for your essay. You don't really need a source to talk about the plot because if you watch the movie, you can actually talk about the plot yourself. After that second week, there's a homework assignment where you're going to turn in your thesis statement. During the third week of the project, you're going to finish working on your rough draft. And you want to make sure that everything is in the MLA style with the proper documentation and formatting. You want to make sure that you have those checked so you can send it to a tutor. You can send it to me. You can go to the library, which would be best if you could go to one of our libraries and have a tutor sit down and look over it with you. But either way, you want to make sure you have your proper MLA so there are no deductions on your grade. You're going to turn your rough draft in to the Smart Thinking tutor. This is an outside of SPC tutor that will give you some good feedback. But again, seeing an SPC tutor in addition to that would be a great way to ensure you get the best grade possible. After you turn in your rough draft to the Smart Thinking tutor, you're going to get feedback sent to you, and you need to submit a copy of that feedback to me for a grade. So during the final week of the project, you're going to edit your essay based on feedback, turn in the final copy of your essay for grading, and also submit a copy of your tutor feedback from Smart Thinking for a grade. Now, how do you conduct research in the database, which is required for the essay? First, you have to get to the database. To do that, you go to the home page of your My Courses and scroll down towards the bottom and look for the resources. And here in the resources, you'll see Library Resources and Services. This will bring you to the search bar. Now, there are different things you can do in order to find sources for your film. I recommend that you start by putting in the title of your film in quotations so it stays together. You can then add different keywords if you want to. So if I were doing a search for The Wizard of Oz, I might just search for The Wizard of Oz in quotes, or I can add other words to that, like the word analysis or characters. Critique is another way to say analysis. Sometimes that results in different sources. Setting or theme. So you might try different words to go along with the title, or start with just the title if you want to. But either way, you want to sift through things to see if you can locate anything that's promising. And again, you want to find something that analyzes the film or gives some insight into the film. You can give your own opinions as well in your essay. There are some things you have to be careful of because you can't use the word I. For instance, no first or second person should be used in the writing of your essay. Now, when you scroll down, you'll see there are lots of different types of sources available. Articles, newspaper articles, ebooks, and things like that can be read online in the database. Anything labeled as book is a print source, and you would have to get a copy from one of our libraries in order to use it. Now, once you find a source that you might want to use, you can read it by clicking on the View, or sometimes it'll say full text. But once you click on it, you'll be able to read the source and then determine if it has some content that you want to use. This one has me go to an additional link down here, full text article, and you can click it and read on. Sometimes it just pops up the whole thing for you to read because all the databases are a little bit different. This is just a search, but it gives you a search through over 100 databases to find information for you. So when I click on it, I can give it a read and then decide if this has content that I want to use for my essay. Now, if I like this source and I want to use it, then I need to make sure I get the proper MLA documentation for my works cited page. Like I said, all the databases look a little bit different, but you want to locate this thing called the toolbar. Sometimes on the source, you'll find it here in the view record from that original main page. But once you find the toolbar, either across the top or on the side, you can click Citation Tools, or sometimes it'll say Cite. And when you click on it, it'll give you some options. You either have to scroll down to locate MLA or change the window to the MLA 8th edition. This is the content I will put on my works cited page. And this will show that I utilize this source. So I can copy this and place it on the works cited page of my document. Now, when you use the source in your essay, it isn't enough to simply have the source at the bottom of your essay. You have to also indicate where you used it in your essay. Now, keep in mind that you have two options. You can either paraphrase the information, so you read something and you put it in your own words, or you can do a direct quote. Take something out of the original source word for word, place quotes around it, and put it into your paper. Keep in mind that typically when you're doing a research essay, quotes are bad. Try not to quote unless you absolutely have to. Obviously, if you're writing about poetry, and sometimes you need to quote from the poem because you're going to talk about that quote. But when you're doing research and you're reading the analysis of something, it's best to put that in your own words and then document it, because it shows your instructor that you understood the analysis if you can rephrase it for your instructor. So paraphrasing, or putting it in your own words, is best. Now, in order to figure out what to put in the documentation, it's based on how many authors are present. So after you write the information in your own words in your essay, you then put the documentation at the end with the period on the outside, just like you've been doing with your forum posts. If there's only one author in the source, then it's simply the last name of the author. However, for MLA, if there is a page number present on your document where you're getting your information from, you then have to do a space and then the page number. If there is no page number present, then you're going with just the last name. So for this source, there are no page numbers here. It's just the text. If it gave me page numbers, I would have to use that. But if it doesn't, then I just go with the one author rule, the last name of the one author. If there are two authors, and I've adjusted this to have two, it's a last name, comma, first name, and first and last name. If there are two authors for the source, then in the documentation, you go with both last names and last names only. If there's a page number, you include it. If there are three or more authors, when you look at the author section on the citation, it'll actually look like this. It'll just have the first author's name and then this abbreviation, ETAL, which means more. So you've got, for three or more authors, this is how it will look on your documentation when the database makes it for you. And when you do your in-text citation, after you've paraphrased in your own words the information from the source, you put in the last name of the author, but you also include the ETAL if there are three or more. So basically, if it exists here, it also exists here. And then if there's a page number, you add it. If there are no authors, the rule is that it will begin, instead of the authors, because there are none, it'll start with the title of the article you read. And so what you do for no authors is you start on the left side and you work your way in to the first noun or noun phrase. Typically, 2 or 3 words will do it. This one has some smaller words because of the title of the film. So we start on the left, we work our way in to the end of the first noun or noun phrase. In this case, Wizard of Oz is a phrase. So here in the documentation, notice that there's a parentheses and then there's the quote inside the parentheses. The Wizard of Oz, we just go to the first noun or noun phrase and we stop. We don't have to include the entire title. and then we end the quote. If you have multiple sources that start with the same words, then you keep on going up to where the words change. So then you end your quote, close parentheses, period on the outside. If there's a page number though, you also include that. Another thing to keep in mind is there actually are two different ways to document. Most students have seen these before and they're familiar with this, where you add your information from your source and then you put the author's name at the end in parentheses. However, you can also document like this. You can simply write the name of the author into the sentence with the information that you're paraphrasing. If you write a sentence like this, you have given credit to the author. So you don't have to put parentheses at the end because you've already said where the information comes from. So to avoid plagiarism, the rule is simply let the reader know where you got it. And if you've done that, then you haven't plagiarized. Obviously, it can be easy to mess things up with documentation now and again, and it is important to make sure that you document correctly to avoid plagiarism issues. So, it's always recommended that you get your work checked whenever you're doing a research paper that includes documentation, because you want to make sure that everything comes out correctly.